27 countries going to the polls. Can we really talk about common issues in this European election, or is it 27 countries voting on national issues?
First of all, good morning and thanks for the invitation. It's true that you don't have a European public sphere, so that really means that you have 27 member states voting separately on different agenda issues. Overall, though, you can see that there are some European tendencies where really, for instance, cost of living played a big role. Also climate's not going away. So there are some common tendencies, and based on that, the European Commission and, of course, with the political guidelines, the Council and the European Parliament will decide upon the next priorities for the next mandate.
There's a lot of focus about how particularly hard-right and far-right parties are going to perform in this election. If their representation were to increase, what does that mean for policy making in the European Union? What does a differently composed parliament mean for some of those really big challenges?
Yes, so I wouldn't be too alarmist. I mean, looking at polls, you will have a slight share increase of far-right parties. I think what it will affect mostly is, of course, how centre parties will react to that change. And I think it's very interesting to see what kind of alliances they're looking for, especially the European People's Party, which are the Conservatives in the Parliament, deciding whether they want to have like a bigger coalition with the Social Democrats or whether they're looking to the right. For instance, the European Conservatives and Reformists, so Meloni's party also in Italy, which are neo-fascist, so it might have like a slight policy change, but that's up to the Conservatives really. Overall, I would say that we will have a bigger share of the far right, but it's not to the point where they will decide completely upon the next EU agenda.
Yeah, of course, Giorgia Meloni's party would describe themselves differently to that, but I wonder on policy areas like the Green Deal, for example. 5 years ago, all we were talking about was climate policies in these elections as well. Is the Green Deal in danger now?
Well, I hope not, because it would be quite erratic policymaking, and that's pretty bad also for businesses who already did the investments. So I think that policymakers are aware of this, but it's true that we are in a completely changed political environment. 5 years ago, we didn't have the COVID-19 pandemic, we didn't have the Russian aggression war. So there are some, crises coming up which made that other priorities are now more important, such as defense, competitiveness, rule of law and democracy also being part of the leaked strategic agenda. Maybe that's also important to understand that the European elections are important for the European Parliament, but they really define also the priorities. So they define the top jobs coming up and also, whatever the Council is going to do. And if you look at the priorities there, I think the Green Deal is not completely going away because there is still quite a lot of enforcement and compliance which is required from the initiatives that have been taken. The question is how much new initiatives will be taken, and especially on issues such as the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, CBAM, which also affects a lot of import-exports into the single market. There's still a transition period, so I think it's not completely done yet, I would say. It might not be at the top of the decision-making priorities overall, but in the background it will definitely continue to be a topic.
Sophie, you're an expert in the Franco-German relationship as well, and I'm interested in how you feel under Olaf Scholz and Emmanuel Macron. How is that shaping the dynamic in Europe? Because, of course, the leaders have a very important role to play after the European elections as well when it comes to selecting the Commission President.
So we all know that at the highest level in the governments in France and Germany, they didn't necessarily have the best relationship, unfortunately, but it seems to be shifting slightly since Macron did his second Sorbonne speech, where he really laid out basically his European program and also his expectations for the next Commission. And Scholz, you had a few state visits where they seem to now have a bit more of an understanding that they really need to invest in competitiveness, investments, and also make sure that we have a good industrial base in Europe, because that's really what they're looking at, that they see.